Can you sense something wonderful is happening? Can you sense that? Can you feel that? Do you know why? Do you have any idea why? It's because of you. It's because of us. See, our grace is to come into this world to make something great happen, because we are not these little beings in human form. We are actually the light and the love of God. And I'm here today to talk about love and talk about healing. I have about 10 talks. My talk keeps changing. And when I was in prayer, I asked Spirit, so what do I say? And I was told it's none of your business. So I don't know what's ahead, but we'll go through the journey. So I want my notes here just in case something comes to me that I need to read, or a quote that I'd like to share with you. So some of you this is my third time here when Reverend Jennifer called me and asked if I'd be willing to be here. I'm not Reverend Jennifer, most of you know that, but she asked if I would be here and to speak about healing and to do my workshop. I was very honored. I know that this ministry doesn't call back people to do repeat performances very often, and I'm so honored. Just very briefly, for those who don't know me, I was diagnosed with cancer, stage 3 last year, and I went through a lot, lost my ministry, lost my apartment, ended up homeless. In December, I was told I was cancer-free 4 months before my chemo was supposed to end. I didn't know what I was going to do with my rest of my life. Ended up in San Francisco being certified as a cancer coach. I just got my certificate this last week. I'm certified. I've had my first couple coaching clients last month, and I held my breath as I asked them if they wanted to continue to be coached, and they said yes. I'm like, wow. I must have done something right. I do have a sign-up sheet out there if you want any information about what I do. So it might be kind of bizarre that my whole workshop's called From Hopelessness to Love, or From Panic to Powerful, is because I realize that, we go through life and just in a moment, like when I got the diagnosis of cancer, that was the last thing I expected that day. Was I made my way to my office at my Unity Church. The last thing I expected. I had no idea what was going to be in front of me. And as human beings, we have no idea what's in front of us. And I think that it is now time for Unity to take this light and this love and this joy that we are, and to really take it out in the world, even beyond prayer, because our world is filled with a lot of hopeless situations. And we ourselves may sometimes feel hopeless when we begin to look at the news. I mean, wars starting to accelerate a little bit here, or maybe a lot into the world. There's a lot happening, weather conditions. You are caregivers of parents who are going oftentimes through difficult situations. I know as caregivers, it must be very difficult to know how to maneuver the energies that come up when you're doing that. So I'm here in my workshop to give us tools of how to maneuver through some of this so that we can do it in a way that when something comes up before us that is alarming, that we can move through it and be the light that we are. And so I am trying to do some alchemy here and to take what seemed to be a horrible situation and to turn it into gold. And so that's why I'm here. So I'm really happy to be here this Sunday because today is actually the anniversary of our co-founder Myrtle Fillmore's birthday. And around our Unity movement, a lot of churches do special things to honor Myrtle. And Myrtle has always had a beloved place in my heart. All my work with the children is the child coordinator. But what's more important is Myrtle's story. And if it was not for Myrtle's story of healing, we'd not be here. So Myrtle was diagnosed with tuberculosis. She had 3 small children, and she went to the doctor, and they told her that she would be dead in a few weeks. But Myrtle said, no, I'm going to look for something else. She didn't give up, but she didn't know what the secret to her healing would be, or if she would be healed, but she decided that she still was not done, and that there was something waiting for her. And so she began to go to lectures of these alternative healers, and she went to a lecture one night with Charles Fillmore, and there was this man called E.B. Weeks, and he said something that touched her heart. He said, "You are a child of God. You do not inherit illness." Now, the reason why this impacted her so much is in that day and time, there was a belief that tuberculosis was an inherited disease. They didn't know it was contagious. And she was told from when she was little that there was a strong possibility that she inherited illness, tuberculosis. And so this was really ingrained in her consciousness. You and I have a lot ingrained in our consciousness, and we have worked very diligently to move through that, to heal all of that. However, I think what we need to do is rattle the cage a little bit, to dig in the mud a little bit, and to say, okay, I'm not creating over that old consciousness anymore. I'm done with it. Wayne Dyer, when he, I was just reviewing one of his audio tapes when I drove to Chicago last month, and he had said in his audio tape that when he realized this thing about recreating out of our own consciousness, he said to the people who were listening to them, myself, in that moment, tell yourself, I'm not doing this anymore. I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing this game. It's over. And something within us will listen to that. So, I invite us to say that the story that we've made up about our health may not be the final truth. And I'm here to say it's not, because I've been healed. Myrtle, if she was here, would say that to us as well. She did not inherit illness because her inheritance comes from God. And if there's anything that I can get across right now, is that you are a child of God. You did not inherit illness. Anything that we are experiencing opposite of health and vitality is of our own creation. Take a breath. You know, the law of attraction works on both ends of it, right? We like when the good stuff appears in our life, but then when the other part of our life happens, we're like, we blame God, we blame our spouses and loved ones, we blame the environment, which, yes, our environment is what it is, but we're the ones who created the environment. And I believe as quickly as healing can happen, the earth can correct itself if we were in the right space. Because I believe we even created that, and we can recreate it. I'm not sure exactly how that happens, except it's the power of who we are latent within our souls. And it's time to unleash it in a new way. My bout with cancer was not my first healing. And in the early 1980s, my husband left me with 2 young children, and I got very stressed out because I was a teacher prior to that, and I'd given up my teaching position to be with my kids, and that was very stressful when he left because I could not get a teaching job in that day and time. It was very difficult. So I had no income. I had a mortgage that was over $1,000. My life seemed very stressed. I was very stressed. I was very hurt by his leaving. I was blaming him. However, I had hit rock bottom because I was diagnosed with 3 different things. I was told that my teeth needed surgery because I had gum disease, periodontal disease, and it was very bad. So I asked the dentist, can I have the surgery and I could pay you payments because I didn't have insurance? And he said, no, you have to pay cash up front. And I was like, well, excuse me, but if I had cash up front, I'd have insurance. Right? Right? So that didn't work. Then I had plantar's warts growing on my feet. And they began to spread, and it got to the point where I couldn't walk with shoes, only sandals, because I counted on my left foot 44 warts. And it was very painful to walk. So I had gone to a foot doctor, and they said, well, you need surgery. And I said the same thing and got this very same result. Well, I still wasn't getting what I needed to get, and I ended up in the hospital hemorrhaging. And they said, you need immediate surgery. And I said, I don't have insurance. And they said, well, you need to have it. And I said, okay. And they said, someone will call you on Thursday to set up your appointment for surgery. I said, fine. Thursday came and went, nobody called me. And I said, okay, if I hemorrhage again, then I'll have the surgery. If I don't hemorrhage again, I won't. So I just sort of let it be, and I never hemorrhaged after that. But this is what happens, because I asked myself, what was the common ground between my cancer and that situation? There was a thread between that may be a clue to how healing happens. So this is what happened. I was very new to Unity. I went to Unity of Oak Park in Illinois. And one day in the service, Richard Dale Billings said, he was talking about the story about the woman with issue of blood. Well, that got my attention right away, because that was me. And I don't know what he said. It was something in the woman reaching out to the hem of the garment that meant something to me. It was that act of faith to connect with an energy greater than herself. That is the key, is when we reach out and connect to this energy that we call God that is greater than ourselves, when we surrender to that power that's greater than ourselves, then the law of resonance happens. And the lesser energy equalizes to the greater energy, and it becomes the same, just the same principle as you jumpstart your car. It's that simple. So, lo and behold, I made up my mind in that service, and I said, if I could say a prayer or affirmation one time with faith, like our daily word, one time with total faith and trust, then everything would be okay. And I was like, evidently, I don't believe I can be healed. And so I said, okay, I took a deep breath. I said an affirmation that I had been using. I don't remember what it was. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to pray again. And I didn't. And I have to say, I won't go through all the story, my teeth, my gums regenerated. My gum in the front was split open in two. And within 6 months, it totally went back, and I've never had gum surgery in my life. I actually had a picture of healthy gums so I could look at my gums because I didn't believe it was happening. I never went back to have that surgery. I never hemorrhaged again. And later, when I finally had a gynecological exam, there were no tumors. They were ripping my uterus. There were no tumors at all. And this was the best. I go to a Unity retreat. It was in October, and I had to get on this boat, and I had these shoes on, and when it pressed against my plantar warts, it was painful. And I said, I must have complained, and this lady said, oh, what's the matter? And I told her, and I said, I just got insurance. I just started teaching. I'm going to have the surgery. And she said, please don't. She says, I'm a podiatrist. And she said, the worst thing that we do in our field is we do laser surgery for plantar warts. You don't need surgery. This is what you do. And she told me. So I went home on Monday, and I got a camera, you know, those little disposable cameras, and I prepared my hot bath, and I was going to take a picture and document my healing. Except when I sat on the floor to take the picture, there was not one plantar wart on my feet. I don't know how to explain it. I have no idea how to explain it, except I could tell you that healing happens. Okay? And the clue that I want to give you is this, It has everything to do with love, an open heart, and a trust in God. And the second thing I like to say is that you need to listen to yourself. You need to trust yourself. In this book called Radical Remission, it's about cancer patients. And the author, who is a doctor, did a research project. You see, I'm taking a lot of notes on this. Said there's 9 things common to a cancer patient that has a radical remission. And there are things like diet, controlling your health, taking control of your health, intuition, supplements, suppressed emotions. That's another thing. What got us to where we are suppressed emotions. And what I discovered in my bout with cancer, that even though I lived most of my life feeling a lot of joy, and I was practicing our unity principles, and I was doing really well, when I finally got to the point of all that happened, all this suppressed emotional energy of my life came up, and all I could do was get in the mud and dig until I found the spring of healing waters that flow beneath the earth of this body. Sometimes we need to get down on our knees and get dirty. Sometimes we need to dig through the muck, and we have to stop labeling ourselves as being negative, because we are not negative. We have negative thoughts and beliefs that we need to go through. We need to let them rise up to the light so that they can be out, so that we could be awakened. But this is how we do awakening. I had this come to me last week when I was driving to Cape Cod. This is how we do awakening. Our spirit comes up to us and says, Edie, wake up. Edie, wake up. And Edie goes, leave me alone. I'm having a dream. I want to see how this dream ends. Leave me alone. It could even be a nightmare, because we want to change the nightmare into something good. And all this we say is a dream, don't we? And our spirit's saying, let me wake you up. Let me take you out of the dream. And we're like, no, not now. I like right where I'm at. I don't want to get out of bed. Let me sit here and be here a little longer. It is time to listen to that call. We're all wakening up. We are all given the opportunity not to have to be in this mud any longer, because the spring is rising up and cleansing us, mind, body, and spirit. That is the awakened state. So sometimes we just have to willing to get in the mud. In Radical Remission, there was a couple things that stood out to me, and one was, there were 2 things, was listening to your own self and having a strong spiritual connection. Those were 2 of the 9 common factors. In here, there was a story about a young man named Matthew, 27 years old, diagnosed with a tumor in the middle section of his brain. And they had done everything medically possible for Matthew. And then finally, they sent him home to hospice, and they said he had a couple weeks to live. And when the doctors told him that, I'm going to edit this because I can't say what he really said. Something rose up in him, and he said, the blank I will, I'm not going to die until I've given every attempt to figure out how I can be whole. I'm not blanking doing that. I'm not giving up. Now, Matthew did not practice any religion. He never even thought about himself as being a spiritual being. But what he sought out was spiritual counsel. And he found a shaman in South America, not in Brazil, that did work with people. It was very expensive, and he wanted to go see the shaman. But the shaman was really successful with working with cancer patients. But Matthew had no money. And he didn't know how he was going to get down to Brazil and to pay for this. And when he told one of his friends, his friend said, that's not a problem. We will have a fundraiser for you. So they formed this fundraiser and invite these people, and they're having this party, and this lady's walking by, a complete stranger, and she stops, and she said, what's going on? And they told her. And she said, that's not a problem. I don't have much money, but I'll buy your ticket. And he ended up with his ticket. But then something changed in him, and he began to continue to listen to himself, and he got a redirection. And it was like, no, don't go see the shaman. Go see John of God in Peru. Well, he didn't know who John of God is, but he did an internet search. And now he felt embarrassed because he has a ticket and he can't get a refund. He still now doesn't have the money to get a ticket. But he was impressed because John of God didn't charge anything. And he began to bump into people who talked about their experiences with John of God. So his family, his friends, people supported him, and he actually went back and forth to Peru for 2 years. He can only be there 3 months at a time because of his visa. The first day that he was in his little hotel or hostel, he was falling asleep, and all of a sudden he was woken up because he thought he left the bathroom light on. And so as he was about ready to get up and shut the light out, this beautiful woman of light walked out of the bathroom and came over to him and placed her hand on his head and just looked at him. And then she disappeared. He talks about the feeling of love that he had when this woman of light touched his head. He talks about the love he felt every time somebody helped him to get back and forth to Peru. The love and support he felt, he believes, is what healed him. He began to experience what the love of God was. He said in that moment that that woman touched him, he knew what the love of God was. This was a man with no spiritual background. 2 years later, and for those 2 years, John of God sent him to this room to meditate with these other people. And that's what he did most of the time he was there. And 2 years later, St. John of God came up to him and said, you need to go have an MRI because you need to go do this for the other people. And when he went to his doctors, there was no tumor in his head. He was healed. And he continued to go down there for a couple years. In fact, he met a woman down there and got married and lived there for a while. But he's here somewhere on the East Coast, Matthew, right now. And he actually spent time helping others and assisting them to get the healing they need. So here's what we get to learn from this. God is where we place our trust. There is something moving through us that's greater, and there is assistance on the other side. Just like this angel, those who were here at my first talk, my experience with the ascended masters and angels, I didn't believe you could have experiences like that. I'm telling you, ask. They never intervene for you unless you ask for help. So if you don't know what to do, ask, and you will be guided. You live in the question, what now? What now? Don't try to figure it out in your head. You won't go anywhere. It's in your heart. Okay? The second thing is trust yourself. Trust yourself, because you will be taking each step and knowing exactly what to do. In January, I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I knew it was not ministry anymore as I knew it. In January, I knew I wanted to work with cancer patients. In February, I found out about the cancer journey. I am now a certified cancer journey coach. How many months is that? Not many. I know I'm writing my book and I want to travel. I knew that in my heart. In the last month, I have booked 19 churches to do workshops and talks. Last Sunday, I started my tour. I was at Unity in Cape Cod. This is the power of trusting and allowing, and this is very important, is to allow the grace of God to come through you and to you through you and to you. There's a Bible passage I'd like to read to you. It's from Proverbs 3:6. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. I was like, what does that mean? What it means in that day is that's what they did with slaves. That's how the oxen, they would bind them with a yoke. Let love and faith be what directs you. That's how they would direct the oxen through the field. Let that direct you through your inner work. Love and faith. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and good name in the Spirit of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your might and lean not on your own understanding. And always submit to him, and he will make the path straight. Love is the key. Love is the key. Love embraces all things. It allows all things. It trusts all things, and thereby transcends all things. Love is the key. Love is the guide. Love embraces what we need to do and shows us the way. Jerry Jampolsky is a Unity minister, and he has a very special ministry. For, I think, 40-some years, Jerry and his wife have been working with children with cancer. And this is what he says about forgiveness, and forgiveness is very important. Forgiveness doesn't mean that all of a sudden you and I are going to start hugging each other if you and I have a problem. But it really means that you are letting go of the past, which we all call the celestial amnesia, so that the other person doesn't have to change at all and may not change. I think this is so important. That little song we sang, Jim, about letting go of the past and letting go of the future. When you are in the story, you cannot heal because you're stuck in the past. When you're worried about your future, there's stress and anxiety, so you cannot heal. But when you align yourself, like Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul, that's where you're in the seat of your soul. That's where you're in your Christ consciousness. And you may have to return to it many times in a day. But when you align yourself there and you observe what's going on in your life, all those feelings of hopelessness dissipate. I found out last week through some research that feelings and emotions should last no longer than 45 seconds. If not, up to 90 would be the optimum. That would be the most. How many of us have lived in a feeling or emotion of our past for years? They are meant to pass through us very quickly. That's why in the meditation I did the thing about the screen. Because if you could see yourself sitting in the seat of the soul, if you can observe whatever's there, and if you could breathe through from that Christ nature and release it, then you're back to center. So that would be the practice that I would give you. I invite you to let love be the key. Fear of separation from our life when we are dying, fear of money, fear of hurt in relationships, or even letting ourselves be loved, fear because of what our kids are doing, fear because we think we'll never be loved. Ultimately, the fear is fear of separation from Source. All fear is an invitation to return to love. And when we feel connected, we remember that we are love. When we know we are love, then we could be love for others. And that is what will cure the world of all its ills. God bless you.